Hello and welcome. I'm Chris Grundemann, an independent analyst and consultant. Today, I am your host for this Gestalt IT technical interview with Alex Samonte. Alex, why don't you introduce yourself a bit?
Yes, my name's Alex Samonte. I'm the field CTO here at Fortinet, um, and also VP of product development. What I do is, I talk to a lot of customers, especially about our security products. We are a cybersecurity company, and we have a number of different products that all work together to provide security for all of our customers. As you can see, I also do a lot of pinball. These are just four of my 15 machines. I used to be a world ranked pinball player. I don't do much competition now, but I still play in a number of weekly leagues.
What I want to start with first, Alex, is looking at this difference between maybe classical AI or machine learning that we've been doing for years and years now with the generative AI hype that's happening around here. So first, I want to touch on kind of the use of AI at Fortinet in maybe those more classical machine learning methodologies, right? How does FortiGuard and FortiFabric use AI today? We'll hold the generative AI conversation for a minute later.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot to kind of dissect there, but it's almost funny to me that now the kind of machine learning and classical AI now has the classic tag to it. I didn't realize that it was the old version now, but AI certainly has been in use for quite a while, and a lot of the techniques for what I'm going to call AI/ML, for that machine learning in combination with AI. The techniques that Fortinet uses really comes down to how we deal with a lot of the threat intelligence that's coming into us. So we have a group of our threat researchers called FortiGuard Labs, and what they do is they provide all the threat intelligence that goes into all of our different products. So we have a number of different products that operate on both the the network side, whether it's like a firewall, IPS, AV scanning, looking at spam and mail. There's a lot of adjacent ones that like maybe a web application firewall, or maybe even DDoS protection. I mean, there's a lot of different ways we can apply all of the security intelligence that we come back. And we have a lot of devices out there which are feeding us information. Our FortiGuard Labs also uses external feeds of threat resources and brings those into the data that's coming in. But I've been at Fortinet now for almost 15 years. And even when I started, the amount of data coming into FortiGuard Labs was more than I would say people could handle. Meaning, they just couldn't take the data and say, okay, well, I'm going to look at this website, or I'm going to, go check this thing out and see if it's, malware or not. There were a lot of things that were just so much volume that people couldn't handle this. And so Fortinet early on invested in AI and machine learning to basically take all of this big funnel of information and start to sort it into buckets of things that we could quantify that are known good, known bad, or maybe somewhere in between. And utilizing various AI and ML techniques that have again changed over the years. And it's, as I said, funny to think that it's now the classic AI. But like all of these things were really meant to feed into a neural net so we could decide ultimately whether something was good or bad, and based on these criteria. So we had neural nets that had billions of nodes, and a node is just like a characteristic. Maybe it's of a file or a website or even a picture, that it would look at all of these things, and through the different combinations of all of these nodes interacting each other, we would come up with the verdict of good or bad. And with a certain confidence level to it. For some of these things, we could basically pull out that confidence level, and then it would lead us to, yes, this is the thing that makes it bad, and we could check it very easily. So there is absolutely a human element of this where we have to vet the things that our AI and ML models tell us. But with all of this information coming in, there were not enough people we could hire. And you touched on the cybersecurity skills gap. I mean, that even makes it even harder just to have people come in and be experts at this stuff, to look at them. And that was probably the first and biggest use of AI and ML that Fortinet had. And it was something we had to invest in just because of the very, very large volume of information. And it's evolved over time. We've had different generations and iterations of it. Some have turned into products. I mean, specific products like our FortiSandbox. Our FortiSandbox was a tool that we used internally at FortiGuard in order to check to see if malware was, good or bad. We would put it in a sandbox and see what it did and look for those bad behaviors. So from this evolution of what FortiGuard was looking at over time, we could see the different trends of where malware was coming, what it looked like, how the bad actors are really trying to change it so we can't detect it as well. So we, again, always need to evolve our techniques as time goes on in order to come up with that. And I would say that's probably the best example of, typical AI and ML. Maybe another good example might be like our FortiDDoS, or maybe some of our UEBA, where we're looking at user behavior or traffic behavior over time, trying to, get a normal baseline and then look at when it goes outside of that baseline. These are all very classical uses of AIs. There I am using that term classical. So I guess, that's very apt. But FortiGuard really needs that as a tool in their toolbox to really help them deal with the volume of information that's coming in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I definitely just was trying to find a term to separate generative AI from kind of all the other AI without being too pejorative. I think it works. We'll see if it catches on. And I think this is a really interesting point, which is that, if people want to inject AI into their cybersecurity practice, most organizations, right, enterprise or otherwise, aren't going to go out and build their own AI ops platform, right? And so I think that's why it's really important for a company like Fortinet to be able to provide this stuff embedded in the tools. And I think my understanding is, based on what you said there and what I know about Fortinet, is this is really kind of protection across everything, right? So we're talking about applications, content, web traffic, devices, users. Is that right?
Yeah. So one concept we have, that we talk about a lot at Fortinet is our security fabric. And really what that means is our different devices, they all have a, open API, which customers could use in any way that they would like, but we use ourselves to share security information between the devices. So give you a good example is, let's just say, you might have a laptop in your organization and you have a policy that says people can't insert a USB into the laptop that maybe I'm recording on right now. And you may have a piece of client software on that laptop that's going to prevent that from happening. And it'll probably do a good job of doing so. And then, at that point, the USB wasn't inserted, or at least you weren't allowed to write to it. And that was, great. You prevented that. But in this scenario, the firewall or the mail device that you have, or any of the other security devices you may have, don't know that occurred. And so if you have some kind of communication between all of these different devices, so like the laptop client just says, hey, you know what? This user just tried to insert a USB, which is against our policy. I thought you should know. And as the firewall, firewall has a new tag that says, oh, maybe this user is doing risky behavior. I can now make a better security decision within the firewall for an event that the firewall would never have been able to see, right? He would have, firewall doesn't see the USB insert because it's obviously outside of the network. But that communication between all of these devices really allows us to share this information across different domains. So sometimes, like, let's just say you get a phishing email. A phishing email might come in with a particular binary that is only useful in a phishing perspective, because, they want you to click on it. They want you to, think it's some kind of, Excel attachment or something like that. But if you go to a web page, you're not likely to download that. So even having that same file signature in the firewall, that doesn't do anything, necessarily useful. But if we take that piece of that binary, that executable, we explode it in our sandbox, and it says, oh, by the way, when this malware activates, it's going to go to these two command and control servers. Well, that's a piece of information the firewall could use. And if we share that information across, between all of them, we've just made this the environment more secure as a whole. And that's really where that value of that security fabric is. So now, how does that tie into AI? It's like, well, that visibility that we are gaining with the security fabric, that's where AI, especially generative AI, starts to take more center stage. Generative AI is really good at, doing some correlations and making some inferences about things that are occurring, maybe about the reasons why something occurs. So you may have log entries, that will tell you that, this particular thing set off an alarm, and then a second thing set off a different alarm in an unrelated system. But, generative AI can take a look at that and suggest to you that something might be happening. And I use that word suggestion, very specifically, because most people are not at a place where generative AI is going to be trusted 100% as the authority of truth. Generative AI has a tendency to what the people in the industry will call hallucinate, about what it's going to tell you. It will sound great. It'll sound that it's knows what it's talking about, but you really need a fact check. And so right now generative AI is really used in a very advisory capacity. So it can suggest things like, hey, maybe this is occurring, why don't you look at it? Or if you ask it a natural language question about why something occurred, it may be able to give you a very good answer, but you're still going to go and check that in the end.
Awesome. That makes a ton of sense. And then, as we alluded to a little bit earlier, I think, while, these AI solutions, whether it's kind of ML in the regular tools, or this new kind of generative AI FortiAdvisor that's giving you some kind of human language responses, one of the reasons that I think Fortinet's solution to all of this, or use of AI, is really interesting is it's backed by this human intelligence from FortiGuard Labs. Is that right?
Yeah, so all of the threat information that is coming in, there is a amount of human vetting that is done. I mean, we can certainly use AI to generate a lot of things, and in that classical AI and ML, and when I say we, I mean, everybody in the community is much more trusting of the things that come out of it. So we're much more willing to automate and, take steps where we can just take that immediately, put it to use. But in the case of security, we're not 100% there from a trust level on AI and ML. We want to make sure that the things that we're seeing are really what they are. So we may have to have somebody that will go check a website and make sure that, this was flagged as bad, but we'll do a verification to make sure that that's the case. Or, if we see malware, something that has a malware characteristic, we may take that piece of malware, put it into a much more instrumented sandbox so we can see the detailed behavior of what it's actually going to do, as opposed to our AI and ML that just says, yeah, it's bad. So we want to know what it's going to do, how it's going to spread. That gives us a lot more insight as threat researchers to be able to provide that information to you. And one of the ways that we can kind of transmit that information is we have something on our FortiGuard Labs page called our outbreak alerts, which is kind of a detailed analysis of how a certain piece of malware works, where it came from, what the campaign, the particular malware campaign's about, where it's most prevalent, what regions, as well as how it may transmit itself from one thing to another. So you can get that detailed analysis of how to break that cyber kill chain. And, wherever you can. Obviously, the earlier you can break it, the better off you're going to be. But, there are a number of different products that can help with that. And we just want to make sure that, customers have enough knowledge to understand what these, new attacks are, and that human element, that human delivery, that human vetting, is really what boils down to the interface to the customer. There definitely have been a lot of stories out of the news where generative AI can if it's talking directly to the customer, sometimes it can say something that you don't want it to. So in the end, we want to make sure that there are people, there are eyeballs looking at these things. And if we do get to a point where we're trusting generative AI more and more and more, then we will escalate the level of how you can interact with it. Right now, we do expect customers will want to interact with it directly, and then they themselves would be the ones taking kind of those next steps from a Gen AI perspective. But for things that are coming out of AI and ML, that classic version, they're much more willing to automate and create either playbooks or automated procedures that will implement some of the things that come out of the the AI there.
Fantastic. And those outbreaks alerts you alluded to, those are available to folks who aren't even Fortinet customers. Is that right? Can I subscribe just as a regular Joe off the street here, or Sally?
Yes, you can. And the outbreak alerts aren't every single thing that goes into our database. I mean, obviously these are the big ones, but yeah, anybody can go in there. They can subscribe to them. They will get an alert that says, "Hey, there's a new one available."
So I think to kind of summarize some of that, I think again, I'm really interested in this kind of dynamic between human intelligence and artificial intelligence, and it sounds like at Fortinet that really is centered on FortiGuard Labs, and the folks in FortiGuard Labs who are experts are the ones who are developing and enriching these AI-powered security services. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of timeliness that every customer wants. I mean, for a security threat, I mean, that's a huge factor in any customer who's dealing with securities. They want to know about it as soon as possible. But there is a way for customers to subscribe to kind of our unfiltered outbreak alerts that they can have immediate access to. These ones may not have full vetting yet. We may say, hey, you'll know this and you can block this, but there may be things like more false positives, or maybe something that it doesn't catch all of the variants. I mean, there's a number of other things where once we know that there's something bad, we are going to go through and kind of package it up the best way possible so the customers can benefit the most. And, again, it's a balancing act between, do you get it out there almost immediately, or do you make sure it's curated enough where it's going to provide the highest value? That, you want the most signal, out of these things. I think we've struck a very good balance for that. We're not really trying to always be the first, but we do want to be the most comprehensive.
Obviously, the AI, ML, generative AI, all this stuff is really exciting. And we've already talked a little bit about the human intelligence behind this. I'm curious as to the role FortiGuard Labs plays in kind of the broader picture, maybe even outside of AI at Fortinet to delivering these security services.
Well, so the FortiGuard Labs threat researchers, they do a number of things, for us. FortiGuard Labs provides that threat intelligence to all of our products, and the threat researchers at FortiGuard Labs, they're really responsible for specific things, like for example, researching things like web content filter, deciding what things go in what categories, what things may be on the malware side, what things may be clean, from a reputation perspective. They could also look at network-based threats, things that like feed our IPS engine, looking for certain particular exploits, trying to find new exploits out there in the wild and maybe get ahead of some of the things that are coming in. They also may be doing things from an AV perspective. Now, the AV perspective one is a little bit interesting because we do have, as I mentioned before, these AI and ML models that will tell us whether things are good or bad. They can tell us really, hey, 90% confidence is good, or 20% confidence it's good, or maybe 80% confidence it's clean. But it's that area in the middle where people really have to look at stuff. We might not always get a definitive answer out of AI, and these threat researchers are taking a look at that, making sure the determination is what it is, and then taking that information and putting it into our threat intelligence. So even if we've determined that it's bad, we might need to also say, oh, well, there are a number of variants of this, and can we figure out what the common elements are in order to create a polymorphic signature that deals with polymorphic viruses. So all of those things are what the threat researchers in FortiGuard Labs will do. Another good key component is application identification. So as new applications arise, or maybe applications change, and applications can be anything from classical standalone applications just to even websites that we'll call an application, but those things change very regularly, and we need to make sure that we are staying up to date with all of these things. So all of these different services that the FortiGuard Labs is providing, that filters down into the different feeds that go into our products, and they're updated all of the time. And this is one of the reasons why customers will want to have these security services so that they stay up to date. And it is a subscription, so that way you continue to get the newest, latest, and greatest things in there. But I would say one of the nice things that I like about Fortinet specifically is it is a subscription that you're paying for. You're not paying for the functionality. So meaning, like if the subscription expires, the functionality still works. You just may not have the latest subscription. We don't turn off the feature because you don't have the subscription. You just don't get an update to whatever the latest is. But almost all customers want that updated information from FortiGuard Labs. And that's probably the last biggest role that FortiGuard Labs provides, is the distribution network for all of that threat intelligence to every single one of our products.
That makes a lot of sense. I can definitely see why Fortinet had, I think one of the taglines on the website is AI-powered threat intelligence for an evolving digital world. And you talk a lot about AI-powered security services. And I think, Alex, you've explained that really, really well for us. So maybe we'll leave it there today. I want to thank everyone for joining us on this Gestalt IT technical interview. Alex, where can people connect with you and continue this conversation, or where can people go to learn more information?
You can find me in a lot of the normal, social places. Just, search for my name. Hopefully you'll see either a stick figure or maybe some pinball stuff. LinkedIn is always a good choice. We can also, if you want more information about the FortiGuard Labs, you can go to www.fortinet.com/FortiGuard.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. This technical interview was brought to you by Fortinet and Gestalt IT, your home for IT coverage from across the enterprise. Head to gestaltit.com for the full article, links, and show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.